Good morning. It's truly encouraging to see such an overwhelming response to this workshop, with nearly 400 participants joining us today, and the number is growing, far beyond what we initially anticipated. This level of engagement clearly reflects the growing interest in strengthening evaluation capacities and national M&E systems across the Caribbean. It is now my pleasure to introduce Roberto Larrovere, Head at the Office of Independent Evaluation at the Caribbean Development Bank, whose leadership has been instrumental in advancing this agenda in the region. Roberto, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome. Welcome to this workshop on tools for diagnosing and strengthening evaluation and national M&E systems in the Caribbean region. The Office of Independent Evaluation, the OIE of the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, thank you for joining us today. Representatives from governments, national systems, evaluation practitioners, regional institutions, and CLEAR-LAC partners for supporting this important event. So at CDB, evaluation is a cornerstone of accountability, learning, and better development results. This is in a region as historically, culturally, economically, environmentally as diverse as the Caribbean. In this region, we must ensure that public resources are used effectively, that projects and policy are grounded in evidence, and development interventions improve lives and the environment in the region. So today's workshop focuses on how to identify national evaluation and M&E capacities and how to strengthen them. Evaluation helps us understand whether we are doing the right things and doing things right and why things are working a certain way. It helps us to understand if we are achieving meaningful change, if we are targeting the right issues in the right ways, and most importantly, what we must adjust or reflect upon to improve the outcomes that we all seek. For Caribbean nations facing fiscal constraints, climate vulnerability, and complex social challenges, strengthening evaluation capacity is not an option, but is essential. Evaluation supports better decision-making, more strategic allocation of resources, and stronger public trust in institutions. The OIE and CDB are committed to strengthening evaluation and national M&E systems in the Caribbean. And this is why our ongoing partnership with partners like CLEAR-LAC is so important. Caribbean countries also often face unique institutional and capacity constraints. Many operate with high staff turnover, limited human resources, or technical expertise. In other words, as we often phrase it, limited bandwidth to cope with so many things at the same time. So strengthening evaluation systems in this context require pragmatic approaches that help improve quality standards, foster independence, and promote the use of evaluation findings in policymaking. Now, the goal of evaluation is clearly being used. An evaluation that informs budget discussions, shapes policy design, or improves program implementation can help transform several of the outcomes we seek. So building a culture of evaluation means ensuring that evidence becomes part of everyday decision-making. So independent evaluation at CDB is committed to promoting this culture internally to CDB, but particularly across our borrowing member countries and in the wider region. So today you will hear about diagnostic tools, the monitoring evaluation system analysis, the MESA, which is already being implemented in Trinidad and Tobago, in St. Lucia, Dominica, and Jamaica, and the National Evaluation Capacity Index, the INSE, as well as practical experiences from countries that have been using them. These tools, these approaches exist to provide a structured, evidence-based assessment of national evaluation systems and to support actionable pathways towards reaching, again, the outcomes we all seek. So we expect this workshop will be a space within a Caribbean and broader regional context where participants can use these tools and approaches to emerge. And so today, please raise your voices, raise your points during this meeting, so it is as interactive as possible. And to focus on the objectives, we really seek today to deepen understanding of what is a robust national evaluation system. We also seek to introduce the tools, the INSE and MESA, and the approaches that Caribbean countries can apply to assess their own systems. And we also seek to strengthen regional collaboration, so to start learning or keep learning from each other regionally in the Caribbean and the broader region. So our commitment is really to work alongside our board member countries through CLEAR-LAC and other partners to advance this agenda, to strengthen evaluation capacities and national M&E systems for better decisions, policies, and results for the Caribbean. So I wish you a productive and engaging workshop today. Welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Good morning, everyone, again. Before we begin, for those who have just joined, you will find a Mentimeter link in the chat. This is a brief activity, and we invite you to complete so you can share a few highlights, such as who you are and what you do in your daily work. You can access it by scanning the QR code on the screen or by clicking the link in the chat. I encourage you to participate. We will continue sharing the link in the chat during the presentation so you can complete it at your convenience. I would like to say a few words too. I'm Chantal Aragon, Evidence Use Director at CLEAR-LAC. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you today. It is amazing to see all the people from the region and beyond. So far, we have 510 participants, and we are also broadcasting through YouTube. And I'm impressed by today's turnout. Let me begin by thanking Roberto and the Caribbean Development Bank for their leadership and for making this regional dialogue possible. We are very proud at CLEAR-LAC to partner with CDB in this important effort to strengthen monitoring and evaluation systems across the Caribbean. As Roberto mentioned, evaluation is about accountability, learning, and results. I would like to build on that by emphasizing something equally important. Evaluation systems are not built overnight, and they are not built by tools alone. They are built through sustained dialogue, trust, and institutional commitment. At CLEAR-LAC, we see our role not simple as providing methodologies, but as accompanying governments in a structured process of reflection and reform. Tools such as Mensa and INSE are not checklists. They are platforms for conversation. Because strengthening an M&E system is ultimately about making strategic choices in many Caribbean countries where there are too many constraints, prioritization is critical. Not everything can be done at once. That is why a diagnostic process matters. It helps move from broad aspirations to concrete, sequence, and realistic reform pathways. And importantly, this is not about copying models from elsewhere. Each country has its own institutional history and administrative structure. Our approach is always country-driven and context-specific. There is a real value in coming together regionally. While systems differ, many challenges are shared. For example, limited evaluation units, fragmented data systems, and difficulties ensuring the use of findings. Workshops like this create the space not only to learn about tools, but to learn from one another. Peer exchange is often one of the most effective capacity building mechanisms. And I see on the chat that you're saying hello, so that's why we want to enhance with this type of spaces. A strengthening evaluation system is not only a technical job, it is an institutional commitment. It involves legal frameworks, human resources structures, incentives, and independence. In other words, it requires thinking systemically. Our partnership with the CVD is about supporting that systemic approach, to move from assessment to action, and from action to institutionalization. Because ultimately, what we seek is not just being better evaluations, but stronger public institutions that use evidence to make better decisions for their citizens. That is an ambitious agenda, but a necessary one. Thank you for your commitment to this work and for being part of this regional effort to strengthen evaluation systems in the Caribbean. We are really honored to work alongside you. Today, I will serve as the moderator of this event. This means I will ensure that each presentation is staged within the allocated time, and together with the team, I will be collecting and selecting questions from the chat. Each presenter will be notified when there are 2 minutes remaining. Please do your best to adhere closely to the allotted time so that we can make the most time of the Q&A session. Now, for the participants here, from this moment, the chat only will allow questions and answers, so you can post all the questions you may have to the panelists in the Q&A section. With that said, I'm really honored to introduce our first speaker, Ketevan Nosade, from the Global Evaluation Initiative, GEI. She will present the MESA tool. Katie, thanks Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chantal. Dear colleagues, thank you for your interest in the monitoring and evaluation assessment tools. I will start by telling you a bit more about the monitoring and evaluation systems assessment or method tool that we use here in GI. So the idea was to develop a guidance that would have helped us to start a dialogue with the governments on how to strengthen their M&E systems, with an understanding that we are not talking about processes or frameworks or indicators only, but we are actually need to look at the system itself and the interactions, the whole government approach. And then if we have a specific needs, look at how it works across particular ministries or stakeholders. So the idea of MESA really came as a tool to help us understand how in the country the policy making, budgeting, and evidence system works. B, how monitoring and reporting systems are developed and if they are linked to informing results. And C, looking at evaluation specifically if the country has capacity and the structures in place for conducting and using evaluations. So there are at least two key questions that through MESA you can answer. One is to understand what M&E ecosystem already exists in the country. And the second is to understand what are the opportunities to further strengthen the M&E system. So MESA will allow you to kind of do a gap analysis with a focus on opportunities. And if you can always find the MESA tool on our better evaluation platform. And I think the wealth of the MESA publication is that we really try to document some of the good practices to date. So when you look how policymaking, budgeting, and evidence systems work in other countries, you can understand where could be the opportunities for your country to also strengthen those. So in that way, MESA is not only a tool that will help you to conduct such assessment, but it can actually help you to understand how it can be improved. Now, when we talk about the M&E system, we really like to encourage governments, researchers to have a broader understanding of what are the country specificities. So how the government works from executive to legislation to judiciary systems, but also what are the context-specific variables that will influence how evidence is used in the country. So this will help you then to tailor the recommendations very actively. But in the framework for conducting MESA, we in a way we propose that there will be at least 3 pillars that you can look at. So policy, planning, and budgeting, the monitoring and reporting, and evaluation. And for you to understand how this works, we advise to look at the following variables. Look at if there is a policy and legal frameworks in the country, because this influences how then these systems are developed. To do an analysis of existing systems and resources and practices, to do a good mapping of stakeholders and incentives for cooperation in this in this sector, and understand the existing capacities and incentives to use evidence and monitoring data into informing the policies. The biggest emphasis that we recommend you to put is to understand what is the end goal, how the evidence or data is used for informing better policies and decision making in the country. MESA itself is is a flexible tool. As I mentioned, it kind of gives you a broader set of questions. It gives you broader set of examples how it is done in different countries. But then we really want to emphasize that it's just a knowledge piece. It's just a tool, and it's for the users that have then the flexibility to pick and choose the right elements of it. So when we conduct messes, we start with having a dialogue with the country, with the counterpart of what are the key questions that they want to answer. And based on the initial stock take, then we kind of design what the scope of message should look like, and we tailor what the specific question should be, what the specific scope of activity should be. This enables us to not just provide a generic assessment of the country systems, but actually help governments to answer the critical questions of how does my system work to date? How can I improve it in a way that it helps me to link evidence to budgeting? It helps me conduct and use monitoring. It helps me to do a very strategic choice on doing evaluations and then informing my policies. It was mentioned that we have actually conducted MES exercises in some of the Caribbean countries. I'm very happy to report that some countries have itself driven these exercises, like Trinidad and Tobago. And this is our ambition. Our desire is that this tool will serve to governments, to researchers to adopt it and use it as per country needs. Here in GEI, we will be happy to guide you in the process, to exchange our knowledge and understanding of the country systems, share with you the best practices, and help you in a way think through it. I would like to end that this tool is really to then inform the next actions. And we have linked conducting MESA to then supporting the governments to develop national or capacity building strategies in the M&E field. And when we do that, the MESA allows you to think how to then strengthen the M&E capacities on individual, on institutional, and enabling kind of the more landscape level. And I would strongly advise that as you start looking for the mechanisms, the tools to do such diagnostics, have the end objective in mind. What is that you want to use this for, so that it's you would tailor your own method to then respond to the questions and develop a capacity building plan that will help to bring real actions in place. I'll stop here, and I'll be more than happy to share with all of you the tool. I will actually put the link in the chat, and me or my colleagues, as well as the CLEAR colleagues, including Chantal, knows this tool very well, so we'll be happy to guide you more in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you for the insightful presentation. So now, two of the countries that have already applied this valuable tool will share their experience with us. Let me first introduce Craig Bergman from Jamaica. He is Chief Technical Director, Performance for Monitoring and Evaluation Branch and Office of the Cabinet. Craig, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me. Would you like me to share my screen now?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you, and we cannot see your screen.
Are you seeing now?
Now we can see you, but we cannot see your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, now we can see your screen.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share our experience, our journey with the MESA. First, I would like to thank all of those persons who contributed to the process, because the exercise that was done by our partners in the GEI, the World Bank, was very instrumental in pivoting our efforts and our thoughts in our journey to institutionalize monitoring and evaluation in Jamaica. So I have to share that gratitude with us. So this diagnostic tool, which was developed by GEI, the purpose was to guide the stakeholders in assessing their M&E capacity. We had not really done so in a formal way in Jamaica before, and we sort of intuitively knew what worked well and what needed improvement, but we did not really and truly have any sort of evidence on which to base any of our conclusions. So this formal structure allowed us to really and truly get down to what was working, what was not working, what were the gaps that needed to be filled, what were the baselines that we were at in order for us to measure our progress, because we did not really know really and truly where we were in the journey that had started probably back in the early 2000s. So by the time the MESA was done, Jamaica was probably more than 10 or 12 years into the process. But what had we really achieved in that 10 or 12 or 15 years? And so the MESA really was useful in showing that. It gave us also a theory of change, which was very important. A lot of times, we do have some sort of theory as to what we're doing, but we're often very bad at articulating it and documenting it. And because of the MESA, for the first time, we really and truly had a formal theory of change. And it involved an enabling environment, the right organizational structures, the right human capacity. We needed the right M&E products. We need incentives to drive the system along. And then we needed to actually use what we were producing out of the M&E. So those 6 elements could summarize what our theory of change became. And as we can see from these 6 elements, it's a very useful guide to tell us, answer a lot of the questions going forward and to identify those gaps, those needs. It was determined that Jamaica's maturity level was emerging. So we were not at ground zero, but we were certainly very far away from where we would like to be. And it gave us a starting point, a baseline to know after 10, 12, 15 years of work, this is what we have achieved so far. So we still had quite a long way to go in the journey, but at least we had some knowledge that we had made some progress, that we were continuing to make progress, but probably more slowly than we needed to be, because the processes that we were doing were not really very structured. Some of the findings of the MESA, we had an RBM framework. It existed, but it was not really formalized. It lacked integration. There was no clear connection between our monitoring and evaluation and knowledge management, continuous improvement. Planning and budgeting were not sufficiently results-oriented. I would confidently say by this point, Jamaica had moved from thinking about inputs and activities to where we were all on the same page, that we were focused very much on outputs, which are the lowest level of result. But I can say, unfortunately, our systems were not really aligned to to focus on and ensure that we achieve outcomes, which at the end of the day is the most important. And you can build a school or a clinic, but does it improve the level of education or level of health of the people? And that's another matter. And of course, my unit, the performance management and evaluation branch, because of the MESA was recognized as the RBM coordinator across government. So just to point out, why am I using the term RBM here and not M&E exclusively? It's because in the Jamaican context, we consider M&E as a very important element of an integrated results-based management system. So when we talk about RBM, we give equal focus to planning, to implementation, to monitoring, and evaluation. And we see all of them working seamlessly. And what we're trying to create is a common language across government, in order that we're all speaking the same language, that we don't have a Tower of Babel, which is one of the problems that we had. Everybody was doing their own sort of thing. Some more findings from the MESA: insufficient M&E capacity within government, a limited supply of and demand for M&E services. A lot of times, the M&E was really only done for internationally funded projects because it was a requirement, and a budget was set aside for it. But the majority of our locally funded government projects, and the small ones, had no M&E. But as I say to people, if you only focus on the big projects that cost $1 billion, what happened to the 100 projects that cost 10 billion? That's a lot of money being spent that is not being monitored and evaluated properly just because you think each intervention is small. It also came out that we were lacking in skilled personnel. Always a serious problem in Jamaica. One second. My apologies. That's always been a serious problem because we have a high rate of migration out of Jamaica, a high rate of attrition out of the public sector as people go to the private sector or leave to go overseas. And our pipeline of people into the system was not sufficient. So in addition to people lacking training, a lot of people also lacked experience. And because there was of this limited supply and demand, evidence was not systematically integrated into decision making. A lot of decisions are still made, with anecdotal evidence, or in a sense, to put it bluntly, flying by the seat of your pants, which is part of a cultural weakness. So although the systems were being built, the culture to really embrace and use M&E and results-based management was not clearly there. There was no strategy for the creation of an evidence use culture. But what we did commit to from around the time that the MESA was done was to create a policy, an IRBM policy. And so the goals for the last 5-6 years have been to formalize the processes across the public sector, to support greater efficiency, accountability, and transparency in the creation, delivery of our interventions, our projects, our programs. We want to align our organizational goals with policies and programs. We have a thing in Jamaica called Vision 2030, which is our national development plan. And we do talk a lot about alignment and cascading, but it does not always necessarily, when you examine the programs and projects, that you say, okay, it's clear we didn't quite align these things as well as we thought we did or we intended to. And we wanted to create a stable foundation for managing performance across government. Standardization, yes, but not necessarily standardization as a sort of a rigid system of control, but enough to ensure, as I said earlier, that we're speaking this common language. So as I mentioned earlier, M&E fits into an IRBM philosophy that we have that integrates and holistically manages strategic planning, implementation, and delivery through policies, through programs, through projects, performance monitoring, and of course, evaluation. And we are trying to ensure that each of these things are improved, because we believe if you strengthen evaluation but you cannot implement, then you're only going to be showing bad results, which of course is going to demoralize the system. And of course, all of this integration and holistic management that we talk about is meant to be underpinned by continuous learning and continuous improvement. As I'm saying to people more recently, knowledge management is going to be a critical enabler in the entire process. So we are trying to also integrate knowledge management framework, and knowledge management system, and knowledge management culture into our IRBM. We have a forthcoming policy, and of course, following from that philosophy, that policy does not deal just with evaluation or monitoring. It deals with the entire cycle of planning, delivery, performance monitoring, evaluation, and knowledge management. What are some of the challenges that we have going forward? Many of these were recognized in the MESA, and all of these, of course, have been recognized in the policy development process. The risks remain insufficient capacity and a weak demand for M&E, especially at the political and senior executive level. There's weak demand. What are some of the constraints we have again? There are resource limitations, and of course, and a lack of skilled personnel. We continue to hemorrhage people out of Jamaica through migration and a transition to the private sector. And of course, the recent hurricane, which cost us 40% of our GDP, is going to put a tremendous pressure on the resources that we need to solve some of the problems, to upskill, to roll out this IRBM policy, which is in the final draft, and we're preparing our cabinet submission to submit it to cabinet now. What are some of the assumptions? Well, some of the assumptions that we have political commitment, and there is, at least on the surface, political commitment to this, even if there's not a deep understanding. And one thing we do have is very strong stakeholder engagement, especially among the persons who are very much involved in RBM generally, and M&E in particular. And of course, the critical enablers to ensure that we continue the journey and move on from being just an emerging country is the training and our international partners. And I have to say, this is part of the strength, of what we have. We have very good relationships with our international partners. They have been very supportive. And once that continues, they have been instrumental in driving the process for us. Because once things have international attention here in Jamaica, it tends to get a higher priority. And we have been, doing a lot of training. And I'm happy to say, with our National Training Institute, Management Institute for National Development, we're finally getting some traction with them to roll out, a set of courses to support our RBM journey. We have done some specific things. Many of these things were recommendations from the MESA, and I'm happy to say that the MESA has not sat on a shelf. We have been mindful in taking advice from it. So we have had our IRBM Excellence Awards ceremony, which we hold in November, and we have had 2 of them. And it has really been important in getting people galvanized, motivated to participate in this whole process. We have developed a comprehensive suite of online courses. We have about eight different courses: RBM, Program and Project Management, Performance Management and Data Analytics, Evaluation, Stakeholder Engagement, Risk and Crisis Management are the courses that we have developed. And we have tested these courses, we have run all of them, and now we're going to be running them on a regular basis through MIND, with the intention to open these online courses to the entire Caribbean region, all English-speaking countries. We intend for them to benefit from this, and we will benefit from their inclusion. And we have a community of practice that is thriving. We have 50 active members, and it grows a few members every year. And we are in the process right now of developing a very sophisticated website for that community of practice. And some of the other things that we have done in the last, since the MESA, is we have formalized 4 reports coming out of my unit. So we have now the first draft of a whole of government business plan, which we have been talking about for about a decade. And we have identified 21 catalytic projects. The only reason that this document had to be put back into an update is because the hurricane hit just when we finished the document. So we have to make some modifications and reintroduce it again. But we have identified 21 projects which are going to be, the microscope is going to be put on these that cut across all sectors and all ministries. There is a document we call the Pathway, which looks at 68 of our projects and programs every year. So it's 68 mini evaluations that we do a synthesis document on. Then we have the Horizons, which is another synthesis document of all 17 strategic and 17 operational plans of the ministries. We pull them together to see what we can learn from all of these documents, strengths and weaknesses in the planning process. We have the
2 minutes,
insight
Greg.
document. Thank you. We have the insight document, which is a landscape and risk assessment. We produced 1 version so far. We're now going to be this year producing the second one. And that landscape and risk assessment helps us to select those 21 catalytic projects for the whole of government business plan. And there's a suite of about 80 to 100 key national indicators related to those 21 catalytic projects. And that we will use this insight report to see if we are making progress. And this is a Pareto rule. The 20% of work we're doing that should be giving us 80% of the bang. And the last document here is, of course, the navigator, which I alluded to, which is where we will be using to track a lot of the work with the whole of government business plan. I mentioned our community of practice. We meet at least 4 times a year. One of those meetings is actually a knowledge fair, where we take an in-depth study of a new idea, a new tool. We also do a field trip, every year to visit an actual project in the field so that we can actually see it rather than just getting reports on pieces of paper and reading, in our offices. And then the other 2 sessions tend to be sort of regular capacity. But we do a lot of networking because at these sessions, we invite people from World Bank or IDB to come and speak to us, to meet our people. We invite people from academia. And of course, the website that I mentioned is going to be this knowledge hub. This is going to be a really important step forward for our community practice because we plan to create online learning modules. We want to document everything that we do, create case studies, knowledge tools, identify best practices and log them. So our members have one place that they can go for all of their knowledge needs. And so we hope that this thing we're working on it now. We're hoping to launch it somewhere between April and May to get it actually go live. Key challenges, the fragmented frameworks and processes. Since the MESA, what have we been trying to coordinating the diverse stakeholders? But I think we have done a good job with that. So what are we focused on now? Because we have so many of these stakeholders on board. Not everybody yet, but enough. We want to build sustainable M&E capacity, and the biggest challenge is getting our senior leaders on board. We have a few who are on board, but a lot of them still don't really understand truly what RBM and M&E can do. And so that is where our biggest battle lies. And of course, if your senior leaders are not all yet bought in, culture is not going to be quite there. So we are still working now on creating and solidifying and institutionalizing the correct sort of culture. So senior leadership and culture is where our work is. Lessons learned from this: integration is essential. Capacity building must be sustained and systematic. Leadership commitment drives into institutionalization process. Knowledge management enables continuous improvement. My last point is we need patience. Institutionalization takes time and sustained effort. It doesn't happen overnight. The MESA has helped Jamaica greatly by giving us that evidential basis, giving us that baseline. It has shown that the international community has an interest, and it also demonstrates, because the MESA took place within a CARICOM context, that this is not something that Jamaica is alone in the journey. This is regional, and I can say that CARICOM does matter to Jamaicans at the political level, the senior executive level within government. And the advantages of MESA, it was a systematic approach. We have gone from this ad hoc, gut instinct approach that we have this document. And I think I look forward maybe in about 2030 for us to redo the exercise and to confirm whether or not we have moved from that emerging stage. So, I look forward to getting support from our international partners to doing this in another 2 to 4 years. I think would be an ideal time to revisit what we have done. And I'm confident at that point, Jamaica will have shown meaningful progress and people will be satisfied that the efforts have not been wasted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Craig, for this presentation. It's really valuable to hear from one of the first countries to apply this tool and to learn how it has contributed to important changes in Jamaica. We're going to share this first slide of the Menti. Where are you joining us today? We have seen in the chat that you are not joining us from different countries, from different regions, and we just want you to respond to this Mentimeter link in case you haven't done it already. We want to share like a few highlights for you. You can access it by scanning the QR code. You have it on the right side of the presentation. I encourage you to participate, and we will continue sharing this link in the chat during the presentation. So far, we have 320 people responded. And also, I'd invite you to make your questions for Craig and our other panelists on the chat. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Andrew Spencer. Andrew is part of the National Transformation Unit in Trinidad and Tobago. And as Trinidad and Tobago has recently applied the MESA tool, we look forward also to hearing about your experience, Andrew. Thank you for being here, and you can start your presentation, please.
Hi, great. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And you should be able to see my screen about now. If just one person could confirm so I know it's up there, that'd be great.
We can see your.
You can see it. Okay,
yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, folks. Well, this morning, what I would like to do, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And thanks, Craig, so much for really giving a great presentation on what Jamaica is doing. I think you'll find some similarities in what we've done in Trinidad and Tobago. And he's made my job easy by explaining certain elements to make my presentation maybe go a bit quicker. So we really wanted to share with you what we've done with our MESA, or our version of MESA in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is how we have organized the MESA project. So the main purpose of our project was, of course, to enhance the national M&E ecosystem. Our MESA is a little bit different, so we call it MESA Plus. The MESA remains the same. It really looked at these first two components, of course, which you would have heard from Craig, the diagnostic portion of the activity, and then, of course, the institutional strengthening activity, right? The two elements that we added when we decided to do our MESA was action planning. We really felt that we needed to get straight to creating some sort of plan. So we knew we would get very rich recommendations from the process, right? But what we wanted to make sure we did was spin this up into something, use the momentum from stakeholders to get a plan, right? A list of recommendations that we could build out into activities that we were actually going to pursue. And of course, component 4 was getting some implementation support, so some technical advisory and support from our consultants who we had do the MESA, right? In terms of understanding what capacities we needed to build in order to be successful in the action plan we'd be coming up with. All right, so that's the difference between what most countries, I think, have done and the way that we've approached it. Of course, everyone is rolling out activities and plans and so from the analysis that they've done. But what we felt was since we were going to procure this ourselves, right, that we wanted that immediate push, right, to make sure we really started strong. So you'll see the distinction there. MESA, the diagnostic side, right? These three different levels of analysis were important to us. Also, the establishment of the focal point network that you'll hear me talking quite a bit about in this presentation. And the plus, right, which was convening our core stakeholders to come up with this action plan, right? And of course, the implementation support. So if we were going to go forward with this, what help would we need? So in terms of the structure, well, when we decided to do this, we wanted to make sure that we had the capacity to manage, but also that we were creating some opportunities for us to learn along the way. So you'll see things of interest, if you're thinking about pursuing a MESA in your own country. We had a shadow team that we developed. So there were two of us here at the NTU, which is my unit within the Ministry of Planning and Economic Affairs and Development. We are the unit that's responsible for oversight of the M&E system. Right. So we wanted to make sure that we had two of us who would be intimately involved in this project, right? Alongside the consulting firm that executed the project, they had a team of maybe 5 folks. They also had their own internal quality assurance, but we also decided because of the scale of what we wanted to achieve, we would also come up with a technical review panel of our own, right? And not so much of our own, but really an external function where we invited a few external stakeholders from IDB, from CLEAR-LAC, and of course from UNDP, to help us with the technical review of the different products coming out of the project. And of course, a stakeholder coordination mechanism. So the M&E focal point network, quite standard, I think, in terms of other folks' MESA implementations, where they're convening a group of stakeholders to help them gather all the information that's critical to actually being able to conduct a robust and comprehensive analysis. Right? That focal point network had representatives from all of our ministries and the Tobago House of Assembly over here in Trinidad and Tobago, but we also had a few other agencies and departments which we knew would play a key role in moving the M&E system forward. So any systems building activities, we knew we had some stakeholders that are very sort of maybe more mature in their practice of M&E, but also they have some maybe greater needs, and we wanted to include them in the process as well. So the focal point network was the key mechanism, right, for us to make sure that we could have reach and for us to make sure that we could engage the vast majority of stakeholders that we really needed to know that the M&E system was serving, because it's not just central government trying to build this accountability mechanism. We really want a system that helps all of its users get whichever benefits they needed to derive from the system. But as you'll see from the conversation, that was one of the questions we had going into our exercise. So what I've done is I've framed this presentation around 4 sort of key takeaways or lessons that we learned in Trinidad and Tobago through the MESA process, right? And of course, the system is more than the sum of its parts. And that's something that we all know theoretically, right? But walking into this process, really sitting with our stakeholders, understanding where they are in the system, we really had a much better appreciation, right, of this idea that it's not just what we've been able to count, right, in the past. Because where we were in our journey, right, the first step was really locating ourselves in the system. So where we were in our journey, we understood that, most of the activities within the M&E system, right, most of the things that people were trying to understand, most of the data that's being collected, right, was driven by activity and project level monitoring. Right. So very much focused on the activity level, some outputs, yes, but even getting to national outputs, that's been a stretch for most of the players in the system. We knew, of course, that, we've been guided by strategic and operational planning frameworks in the past, but imposing results frameworks over those has been a challenge. And of course, we knew that many capacity building initiatives have been undertaken. So we have a lot of folks who've been trained at some level at M&E, right? And we felt that most of these were strengths of the system in terms of the journey that's been taking place so far, right? But we also had some other activities to try to understand where we were on this journey, right? And over the years, what we found is that previous assessments, while they provided a foundational sort of perspective on where we were in the system, they couldn't provide a complete picture, right? lots of possibilities, but for us to understand in building the system what we wanted to focus on next, that was a constant challenge. We had many assessments done, many recommendations, and many ideas. And of course, in these environments, you're competing priorities, right? You could get pulled off one initiative onto another very quickly. So we wanted to know where to focus, right? And of course, limited awareness of what's going on across the system. We needed deeper perspectives there. So the value of MESA, verifying, both that those practices are in place, but also the level to which they function. The adaptability, the flexibility of the approach was of great benefit to us in planning this exercise. And of course, being able to get to the system's perspective, right? So understanding the connections between the nodes, behaviors, being able to surface those mindsets. We knew that a qualitative methodology would also need to be part of our understanding of what's going on in our system, right? So the beginning of this process, really understanding what we wanted this assessment to do for us was a key step in our process. And where that took us was, of course, to the actual process. So this understanding of the process is just as important as the output was a fundamental learning for us in terms of executing MESA. I think where we were at the beginning of this process, we knew we would delve into some really intensive and comprehensive analysis, but also conversations with our stakeholders. And in forging the focal point network and in assembling the stakeholders, in working through these questions with them and having them complete the surveys and having them help us to facilitate some of the analysis, all of these steps that we took helped us to strengthen not just our connections with our stakeholders, but helped us to build that network into something that did not exist in the same way before. We all have the practice of having schedule officers and having our individual connections and so on in government that we work with throughout the ministries. But this idea of assembling a focal point network, having folks that we would rely on specifically to transmit M&E information, to help us to build the system, help us understand their needs within the system, and really give us the key feedback, right? Close those feedback loops that haven't been closed necessarily in the past. The process of doing that was really helpful. So this ability to see ourselves in the system and then see the entire system was really valuable in terms of what MESA brought to the table. Of course, we conducted our analysis along several dimensions. And if you're someone that's thinking about doing a MESA in your country, these are the things in the analytical framework that are sort of tweakable, customizable to an extent. You can choose which areas you want to delve into. So these four, the institutionalization, implementation framework, technical capabilities, and use of evidence were, of course, the areas that we wanted to know more about. And that unfolded through a 4-stage process, right? In terms of the data collection activities, well, it was mixed methods. So some of it was qualitative, some of it was quantitative. We conducted this desk review of 65 critical M&E documents. The shadow team was integrated, so everything the consultant was doing, we were kept apprised, and we were trying to learn as much as we could about how to execute this process. The 30 different individual key stakeholder organizations that were interviewed, again, getting to them through the focal point network was useful, but even before establishing the focal point network, we had to identify exactly who these key folks who had experience in building the whole of government system in the past, who they were and what they could tell us about, the experience of working on the M&E system and what benefits were derived, activities that were being completed. All of those types of inputs, right, really helped us to have a more nuanced understanding of the system, which is where we're trying to get to. So overall results, I won't go too deep into the results of our MESA, but the main finding is simply that while the system it exists and it functions, it's not fully functional and it's not cohesive, right? Technical capability scored the highest at 65%, and on the flip side, implementation framework was the weakest. So thinking about that implementation puzzle, it really laid out some of those key challenges for us, right? Well, the resistance to M&E culture, fragmented implementation, those bureaucratic delays in funding, procurement approvals, they translate into this main finding of our MESA experience, right? Which simply that there's this implementation deficit, a gap between what's promised and achieved. And we know this everywhere in the Caribbean, everywhere in the world, right? That when governments make these commitments, right, there's the accountability piece that we're trying to have our M&E system meet. And the M&E system can really help us to close that gap. So thinking about getting there, right, this activity of strategic alignment, we're really trying to start to begin to connect the system in a more aggressive way, focusing on building those connections. So part of the focal point network, generating it, getting it to stand up, having folks participate, is beginning to connect that system to prepare it for the changes that we want to make. So this comes to this idea of moving from insights to action, right? And what we learned through this process and was really crystallized for us in these intimate interactions with our stakeholders was that to begin this process, we really require united purpose, passion, and persistence. So these are the key recommendations that came out of our MESA. Again, I won't go too deep into these.
Andrew.
Thanks, Chantal. I won't go too deeply into these, right? But remember that part of what we wanted to do was take these recommendations and develop them into a comprehensive action plan. So that action plan has been developed and it is awaiting approval. But these are the main recommendations. There are 8 top-line recommendations, and I'm pretty sure you'll have a copy of this presentation so you can go through them in detail, on your own time. But the plan is built around these types of recommendations, and there are further 23 sub-recommendations which really detail how we want to strengthen our M&E system. But focusing in again on the lessons that we had from this process, really understanding that strengthening the connections in the system is an important piece for us, as well as really getting folks to work together. So shifting from activity monitoring to outcome evaluation is really a priority for the system. That's something that we can only do through this focus on these shared goals. So how are we going to do it? We're going to take the complex problems one step at a time. And we've started to come to see the M&E system as a GPS. So benefits immediately derive from this process and from completing our MESA, working with our stakeholders. We really felt that we were able to have this rigorous technical approach to generating the insights. So again, that idea of getting a comprehensive picture, we really felt that we have that. Strengthening existing M&E network and improving the quality and availability of performance information. Again, this idea of moving to action. These are the things that we needed to know. Where do we go next? What are the recommendations we should focus on first and later? And of course, moving towards those national development priorities and better value for money, we feel that MESA has taken us steps closer to that. So what's the goal? The goal is to build this GPS, and the GPS sort of exists at different layers, right? We've come to see it as a metaphor for the entire practice of M&E, but we're also thinking about it in terms of how we strengthen the system. We don't just want a roadmap. We need to know what steps to take next, what the best routes to get there are, right? If there's traffic, how do we change course? And then for our practitioners, how do they participate in that process, but also in terms of their use of M&E? They also need something that is calibrated, a GPS that tells them, okay, if you're building your piece of the system and then you're trying to actually use evidence, you're trying to just do an evaluation, for example, what are the next steps you need to take? So that's where we are in our journey. And thank you so much for spending the time with us. If you need to contact me or would like to learn more about anything that we experience on the process, you can use my contact information to do so. But what we really, part of what we really wanted to convey to you is that, getting started is not as hard as it seems. This might seem like a complex process, a complex methodology, but you can do it, right? You can definitely go on this journey. You just need a starting point. So thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I really encourage you to participate on our Q&A section, that you can ask Andrew and our other panelists any questions that you have. We want to share with you some answers on the Menti tool. I don't know if it's possible so that you can see, like, we have a lot of people from the Caribbean, but we also say hi to people in South America, North America, Africa, Central America, Europe, Asia, and Oceania. And we would like to make this Zoom, like people from all the Caribbean are here. So it's really, really nice to see you. We have over 400 responses right now. And moving to the other tool that we want to present today, first I want to thank you very much for Katie, Greg, and Andrew for explaining the MESA tool and also the real experience of applying this tool in practice. And now we're moving to the other tool, the National Index for Capacities in Evaluation, that we know as INSE, which is widely used in Latin American countries and has been expanding its scope to countries in Africa and Asia. Today, we will hear also about two experiences, one from Ghana and another from Costa Rica. Thank you all the presenters for being here. I'm now pleased to introduce Juan Carlos from Deval, who we will present the INSE tool. Juan Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chantal, and thank you so much, colleagues from CLEAR-LAC and CDB for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much to all the assistants, especially to those from Asia, and I guess it's really late there, so thank you so much for your attention. Let me start with a warning. I work with INSE since 2020, and I really like INSE. I love this tool. So if you realize that I'm getting very enthusiastic with my presentation, don't take me too seriously, please. And I say that because, okay, now we went through the presentations related to MESA, and we will start with the INSE. I don't want any of you to have the feeling, the impression that we are selling anything here. So it's not about you need to choose whether you implement INSE or MESA to make an assessment of the evaluation capacities in your countries. Both teams, MESA and INSE team, we work very close together in the development and implementation of these tools. And actually, both tools are developed to be implemented in a complementary way. So the question is not whether I choose one or the other, but it's about regarding the need of assessment that I need in my country, how can I take the best of each tool? So that said, I will share my screen and I will very shortly present an overview on INSE tool before my colleagues from Costa Rica and Ghana will get more into the detail about how both tools have been working on their countries. Just like the same as Katie said before with MESA, I will start by highlighting INSE as more than an assessment tool. I'm talking to you from Germany, and I don't know if you know so much about Germans, but we love tools. And maybe this is why I prefer to present INSE not about a tool, but not only about a measurement instrument. It is, of course, but INSE is much more than a tool that produces data or a score. INSE is mostly a network. INSE creates spaces for reflection, collaboration, for learning, to help the countries to strengthen the national evaluation system. Because INSE brings people together, entities to discuss around one central question. How strong is our national evaluation system? And behind this question, and even more important, a second question, how can we improve it? And I like to start with this idea this way, because once the INSE is understood as a network, it will be easier to understand how the tool works, how INSE is helping countries to look at evaluation not only as a technical activity, but as a very important part of how the country, the governments, generate and use evidence from evaluation for better policies. So INSE connects evaluation with governance, with accountability, and with better decision making. So in the next few minutes, my goal is to show you not only how the INSE tool functions, but also how this network, these collaboration spaces generated around INSE are working and how countries are using it in practice. So the network of INSE. I like to present the network in two levels. So the first one, a network at the regional level, at the cross-country level. INSE connect countries to work together. And this is possible because INSE is an standardized tool. All countries applying INSE are using the same indicators to describe the capacities of their evaluation systems. And this makes it easier to compare experiences and identify opportunities for cross-country exchange and learning. The second network at the national level connect the different actors that are part of each country system. So this network is also activated through the INSE, but through the way the information, the data for the INSE are collected. When you make an INSE assessment, it's made through an online survey based on the perception of as many national stakeholders as possible. This way, these actors, these stakeholders involved in evaluation are invited to share how they see the system, how they perceive the system and its capacities. So from this very first moment, from the data collection phase, INSE energizes and connects the stakeholders within the national evaluation system. So, and this is very important, this central idea of the INSE network, to summarize it, since INSE is being applied in 2020, the INSE has shown that it's not only a facilitator of cross-country learning, but also a powerful platform for strengthening national evaluation system from the inside. And how does this network work in practice? So I will share you some examples. As I say, Carolina and Sarah will get more into the detail, but I will share some examples about how the countries are using INSE. Cross-country learning, this is the idea of learning between countries that I mentioned before. INSE has been applied in 11 countries in Latin America, and more countries are now joining INSE network in Africa and Asia. So let me move forward because I will come back to this idea of the number of countries right away. Second, use of the INSE. INSE is a very visual tool. It's easy to be shared and presented. And this helps a lot to produce reports that speak straight to the high-level decision makers and highlight why strengthening evaluation system matters. Of course, INSE is also a diagnostic tool. It's an assessment and is being used for planning. Countries use INSE results to identify gaps, to plan concrete actions to strengthen the system. And since the INSE is being applied every 2 years, countries can also track progress over time. Some examples like Colombia and Costa Rica have even incorporated INSE as a monitoring indicator within their national evaluation policies. So now you have some examples about how INSE is being used. So let me briefly show you how the instrument works itself. I will only highlight a few key features of the tool. If you are interested in exploring how INSE is about and how it works in more detail, you can find all the information on the INSE website. But what I really want to share with you today, something that is much harder, it's not easy to communicate through the website, is this collaboration spirit. But I have chosen 5 ideas to describe INSE as a tool, 5 main ideas. So maybe the first one is the most important one. INSE is a country-led assessment tool. At the country level, the measurements are led and coordinated by the entities in charge of the national evaluation system. These are the ones who decide when the assessment will take place, who will be the informants, what do they do with the results, so everything. When the measurement is conducted, INSE, by the way, INSE generates 74 indicators organized in 5 dimensions to describe the national evaluation system and the capacities of the system. So when the measurement is conducted, all the results are published on the INSE website, and they can be consulted in different formats. So graphic visualization, we have charts. It's possible to download the data. So if you want to get to have a deeper analysis for instance, academic research, you can do it. So it depends on the preferences of the user. As I start, it's important for you to be clear. You can combine INSEE with other assessment tools, especially with MESA. You have seen the previous presentation. MESA allows deeper analysis based on the standardized information provided by INSEE. So the INSEE deliver these indicators, and the countries can say, okay, I want to go deeper in this information. Therefore, they can conduct a MESA based on the INSEE results. This is the complementary that I think is very important for you to know about. It's important for you to know that INSEE was developed during the pandemic, and as in many other areas, we have learned the advantage of working online. So the entire INSEE process runs online, and this makes the tool very efficient. Actually, a measurement of INSEE requires only 3,000 euro and 3 weeks, dollars and 3 weeks. So, by the way, I didn't mention that the measurements are funded by the INSEE partners, and WFP and DEVAL are partnering INSEE, supporting and coordinating INSEE at the global level, and CLEAR-LAC is the INSEE regional partner for Latin America and the Caribbean. So anyway, the most important thing is that the countries themselves contribute with time and commitment to the INSEE, but no additional funds are required to the countries. So this is all about INSEE I wanted to share with you, but let me finish with a final reflection, because I was talking about that before. INSEE is now being applied since 2020 in 11 countries in Latin America. In Africa, INSEE started to be implemented in 2025, so just 1 year ago, and now we have 10 countries that have applied or are now applying the INSEE process. And in Asia, after a pilot implementation in Mongolia, we are now in conversations with the ASEAN and Pacific Evaluation Association to begin implementing INSEE in countries of the region starting this year. So if you take 1 minute to dream about that, to think about that, imagine that in the coming months, some of the Caribbean countries you're representing here or from any other regions want also to join INSEE, this collaboration network. And if that happens, why not dream of a global learning network where, for example, representatives from the National Evaluation System of Mongolia can talk with the colleagues in Costa Rica about how are they conducting the national evaluation agenda, or the BOPIs of Trinidad and Tobago sharing insight with the Ghana BOPI about the role they are playing within the national evaluation system. So it's a dream. But from our side, from the side of the INSEE team, we are always open to dream and to make it real. It depends on you, on the countries. So, and with this, I close my presentation. If you want to join INSEE, you are very welcome every time. Thank you so much. And over to you again, Chantal.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. And actually, it's a dream, but what we want today is to make sure that people understand the opportunities regarding MESA and INSEE, and also the complementaries, and based on that, like a dream beyond. So thank you very much for your presentation. Moving to one of our Africa colleagues, thank you very much, Sarah Adjei from Ghana. She will share her country experience applying the INSEE tool. Sarah, thank you for being here. I know it's a little bit late in Ghana, so I really thank you. And please go ahead. Yeah, now we can see your screen. Maybe you can put it on present mode. We are seeing it as present, as moderator view.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but your presentation is in like presenter mode.
Okay. Is it in presentation mode?
So basically, we see your notes also.
Okay, all right. So let me just Okay. So
think
I
it's
don't actually have any notes there, so you can ignore it. But good evening from Ghana. Thank you so much for having us join this conversation. And I would like to say a big thank you to Deval, one here. A big thank you to Afria for bringing this to our doorstep in Africa as a pilot. So somewhere in March, Afria onboarded the INSEE through the support of DIVAL onto Africa, and it was with 6 countries in Africa as a pilot, including Ghana. So we had Benin, Ghana, Morocco, we had Dr. Congo, South Africa, and then Tanzania. And it was actually to ensure that in Africa we are evaluating our national or assessing our national evaluation systems to know how we are actually faring. And as one said, how we are relating in terms of evaluation systems on the continent. And so for us in Africa, this started as a pilot. And we started this in March with a launch in Ghana, where all the 6 countries I have mentioned all convened in Ghana to launch, get oriented on the INSEE, and start or pilot it in INSEE. So for me, I joined in as a VOPE and a consultant for Ghana. And so today I'll be sharing some of the lessons that we learned in implementing this tool in Ghana. I'll be sharing some key insights with you, some benefits that has accrued so far, and just barely a year. And so we are still learning and making this better for us and the countries on the continent. Beyond the 6 countries that we piloted, we have actually expanded the pilot into 4 additional countries: Gabon, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, and Zimbabwe. So specifically for this presentation, I'll be looking at Ghana. One has told us a lot about INSEE, so I would not bore you. I would rather delve straight into how we worked on this in Ghana. So the INSEE has 5 dimensions. One mentioned, so it's assessed our national capacity systems around their institutional structure, the evaluation that we offer as a country, the multi-stakeholder space that exists in Ghana, and how we use evaluation systems in Ghana, and then the quality of evaluations that we have in the country. Just complementing one's presentation, in addition to we being piloted ahead or prior to that, this tool has been tested or it's been implemented in Mexico, Guatemala, Costa Rica, and this is beautifully presented in this graph. But in Africa, as I mentioned, the 6 countries went through the first initial pilot, for which we'll be listening or sharing in Ghana. Now, the tool that we used, one mentioned earlier that it's all about building relationship. And so the indicators are the same, the dimensions are the same, the questionnaires, the questions in the tool are the same. It's just assigning the meaning, relating it to the context, and is mainly focused on the network, the learnings that is built among the countries that are involved or undertake or go through assessing the capacities of their country's evaluation tool. Now, so far, in terms of progress, 19 countries have been reached across Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And just to add to the 4 countries that I mentioned that are now going through. And the data that has accrued so far at the high level has been used to prioritize capacity development of countries. It has fostered cross-country learning, inter-engagement. How do you learn from each other as countries to ensure that your country's evaluation system is getting better and is getting strengthened? At the same time, the data that has accrued from this process has strengthened national evaluation policies over the countries that has gone through the process. So specifically in Ghana, this tool started with our National Development Planning Commission. And when I say the National Development Planning Commission, they are the national entity that hosts the national evaluation system or capacity in the country. So for Ghana, we have a draft M&E policy. It was drafted somewhere in 2015. It's gone through various political regime, but it hasn't been finalized. At some point in 2018, even the country established a national evaluation ministry or an evaluation ministry. But as countries, political government took over, it fizzled out. And so the policy or the evaluation system is being managed by the National Development Planning Commission. We went into a process of launching this tool on the 28th of May with key government institutions, planning officers, and in Ghana, the evaluation system sits with the National Development Council, and then it comes to the regional coordinating councils, then it comes to the sub-national levels of the ministries, departments, and agencies. And we had the launch in person with 50 key participants, and we had 100 virtual participants. And the 100 participants were from the sub-national regions. So the process we embarked in the launch was to, one, demonstrate how the tool works, go into sort of a practical session and try to answer the questions with the participants that had joined in person and virtually. And this was to ensure that partners who have joined us actually understand the tool that we are using. They can actually respond to it in their institutions when they go back. So my next slide is just a pictorial presentation of the launch that we had in Ghana. And this launch was done in person, as I mentioned, at the same time with virtual participants to ensure that we cover a good number of people so that they understand the tool very well ahead of responding to it. Now, after we finally administered the questionnaire, and the tool is administered virtually, you can fill an offline version, and then when you are sure you have responded very well, you submit it online. We got some response and feedback from the initial attempts of administering. In the beginning or at the initial point, there was challenging completing the tool. People were not sure as to the representation of the members in the institution to respond to. And they had to agree, and so they spent more time because, of course, you have to reflect very well as to how this tool affects your individual organization and institution to be able to respond very well. And then for us as consultants administering this tool, you had to continually follow up, continually respond to calls to clarify areas of the questionnaire where people felt they needed clarity. We needed to engage these respondents very well. And in the sub-region, internet can sometimes be very much of a problem. And so initially we had challenges with people filling the tool online. Thankfully, there was an offline version where respondents can respond, and then when they are sure, they go online and then fill the questionnaire. The feedback that we also got was that respondents felt that 2 years to do this, to do a review after the initial response to the questionnaire, they felt was quite short because the tool would bring certain response that countries need to bring up or they need to address it could be capacity, it could be institutional strengthening, it could be areas of maybe improving the quality of the evaluation. And so they felt that if the number of years for review is extended, it will be helpful. And then one critical challenge, but for us, it worked in our advantage because the government entity, that is the National Development Planning Commission, was very supportive. And if you have a national or your governing entity is not really supportive, it will be very challenging because they have to buy into the idea. At the end of the day, they would be ruling and to be their evaluation index that is being assessed. And so they need to buy into it and they have to give the two their all support. Thankfully, we had very good support from the National Development Planning Commission. So we're able to administer our tool in good time and it was very helpful. Now,
Sarah,
what are some of the
1
learning?
minute. Sorry.
Please say again.
You have 1 minute.
1 minute. Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. So the good thing is that I have actually mentioned some of the things already. So political will is very crucial. And this tool, INSEE, has actually elevated the need and the importance of national evaluation system. It is very critical that we look at the subnational level because for the first time, this tool helped us assess our subnational level. All assessments in Ghana focus at the national level. I won't bore you with this. Let me go straight into the benefits. So the main benefit of the INSEE for us in Ghana is that it has given visibility to our national evaluation system. And now currently, the National Development Planning Commission is working on revising the national policy, which it developed in 2015. Now, the results is available and it's helping the council or the commission engage with all the other national institutions as to how they can strengthen it. Now, there's value addition for us because for the first time at subnational level, we're able to go through an evaluation assessment, which has never happened before. And so this was of great benefit to us as a country. This tool has actually exposed the weakness and capacity needs at this subnational level. And so the NDPC is planning capacity trainings for these subnational level. We are now going to be reviewing our M&E policy, which has been dormant since 2015. And it has given prominence to the need for us to learn across African continents. What is doing well? What is Congo or what is Benin or South Africa doing very well? We compared a lot of notes during the process of implementation, especially with South Africa, and we learned a lot. The advantages, and to wrap up, it creates opportunities for countries to assess their own system, know where they are at, and see the level that they need to improve upon. It helps a country, and for us in Ghana, it helped us identify areas where we need more strengthening as a country. And it really helped us to compare, as I mentioned, especially with South Africa, where we are at, which areas do we need to learn? Do we set up a national school of evaluation? And so on and so forth. So I would like to end here, and I hope I have been able to keep the time. Thank you so much, Savannah. Over.
Thank you very much, Sarah. This is really insightful to see what Ghana is doing with the INSEE tool. For our final presentation today, we will return to Latin America to hear about the experience of Costa Rica. I'm pleased to welcome Carolina Zúñiga from the Ministry of Planning in Costa Rica. She will share the national experience applying the INSEE tool. Carolina, you have around 10 minutes. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours. We can see your presentation now.
Thank you very much, Chantal. And well, thank you very much for also giving a space to Costa Rica to share a bit of the experience using the INSEE. I'm a representative, as Chantal said, of the Ministry of Planning and Economic Policy, which is the steering institution director regarding the implementation of evaluations within the public sector. And first, before going into business, I would like to say that we have believed in this tool since the beginning, since that the INSEE was just an idea. And we have seen it grow. We have seen it evolve into what it is today. We were part of the pilot during the pandemic. And right now, we're about to do the third measurement of the INSE in Costa Rica for 2026. I have to say that it's been a very interesting journey, a very beautiful one. We have the opportunity to work with beautiful people, very smart people, and we also have the chance to share our ideas on how we imagine this tool to be specifically for the region. So without further ado, I would like to share some of the results regarding the past measurement in 2024. As you can see in the tree, going back, as you can see in the tree, the dimension that it needed most work is the use dimension. We perform very well with the quality of evaluation, which is this one, and the multi-stakeholder space, which is this other one. But as usual, use of evaluation it keeps being like a big challenge for us. And if we go into a specific into the subdimensions of the INSE, you can see that we perform well regarding the guidelines, which is the first one, the guidelines of evaluation at the operational, programmatic, and strategic level. We have like a very good grade in there, specifically because we do have several guidelines and also a manual that is available for the entire public sector to use, specifically to manage evaluation. And this has been very helpful in order to implement the national evaluation agenda. We also have good performance regarding quality of the products of evaluation and the quality control. However, as I said before, the use of evaluation keeps being a challenge, specifically the use of the evidence within the different branches and also within civil society. And another point that we need to improve is the incorporation of the gender and right approach into evaluation. So these are two very important things that we are still working on improving for the next few years. And well, along the way, since we have the implementation of the INSE in Costa Rica, we identified that the ideal way of institutionalized the INSE, it was included into the national evaluation policy. We do have a national evaluation policy since 2018, which is an instrument designed to guide the actions of multiple stakeholders in the field of evaluation. And this was like a great opportunity for us to ensure the sustainability of the INSE within the national evaluation policy. The national evaluation policy is implemented mainly by the National Evaluation Platform, which is a multi-stakeholder space. I think that Juan mentioned this before. It is pretty much like a coordination space and participation among the different actors of the national evaluation systems that works to strengthen the culture of evaluation in Costa Rica. We have international cooperation, private sector, we have POPI, civil society, different branches, and of course, the national planning system. And if you can see on the right side of the screen, we have the roadmap of the national evaluation policy. And we actually have two action plans, which are pretty much the way that we implement the national evaluation policy. We have the first one in 2019, 2023, and the current one, which is 2025 and 2030. But by the time of the first action plan, around the mid implementation of the action plan, we have like the first result of the INSE. And we decided that even though the action plan was already published, we wanted to include the results of the INSE as part of the action plan. And how did we do this? Specifically for the first 2019-2023 action plan, we have here like the core structure of the national evaluation policy, which has pretty much 4 pillars: the result-based management, institutionalization, capacity development, and participation. And as you can see, the pillars number 1 and 2, result-based management and institutionalizations, are the ones that include the information bring by the INSE, specifically as a Glover indicator in the first pillar, and as more specific sub-dimension of the INSE in the second pillar regarding institutionalization. Each of these pillars has like their own specific objectives, expected results, and indicators. And this is important for you to imagine to explain how we incorporate the INSE in this second action plan, because we did it a bit different. For the first one, we didn't have much time. But for the second one, we decided to do a better alignment regarding the INSE and the pillars of the national evaluation policy. We did pretty much an internal analysis with the evaluation unit, trying to compare the INSE dimensions with the pillars and the specific action lines of every pillar of the policy, to identify common areas and points of great influence of the INSE with the policy. And as you can see in here, we have like a list of the different elements of the INSE, the different action lines of the policy. We identify how was this alignment, and we see that the better alignment was with the second pillar, the institutionalization one, followed by the number 1 and 4, institutionalization and result-based management and participation, and last by capacity development. So at the end, what we decide to do is not just using, as we did before, not just using the INSE as a global indicators that measure the national progress in the field of evaluation. We do have the INSE as a global indicator, but we also decided to use the information of each dimension as a result indicator for each of the pillars. And we also decided to use the sub-dimension, the different elements inside every dimension, as operational indicators across the policy pillars. So at the end, we have something like this. We have like the global indicator, and we have the different information of the INSE as part of the different indicators of the pillars. And every 2 years, we include this information in the monitoring system of the National Evaluation Policy. I was asked to talk a bit regarding the challenges of use the INSE, but I was thinking that it's more appropriate to refer regarding the implications of adopting such a tool in Costa Rica. Why? Pretty much because in our case, this instrument was well aligned with our public policy framework. It was actually very it complements very well with the work that we already undertake in this training, evaluation capacities, and foster the evaluation culture within the national evaluation system.
I think Carolina is having trouble with her internet. I could ask our presenters if they can also reply to the Q&A section. We have a lot of questions, and otherwise we can also move to the Q&A section, and we can just like wait for Carolina if she
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
Over to you, Carolina.
Great. Just, I'm about to finish. Just a few things. The clear understanding of the INSE components. Since that we have been part of the INSE since the beginning, we have a very good understanding of the different dimensions and the different elements that compose each of the dimension. And we were able to do this alignment in a very kind of easy way. However, it took time for us to do this alignment because we needed to have consensus with the different members of the national evaluation platform, because we wanted for this to be also part of the work that the different actors do in the implementation of the action plans. We also, regarding the measurements, it was really important for us to have a wide representation in the measurement of the INSEE, and this implied that we have a clearly identified the different actors involved in every measurement. We wanted to be, of course, part of the national planning system, but we wanted that the different stakeholders that work actively in strengthening the evaluation culture in our country to be part also of the measurement, not only during the collection of the data, but also at the end when we do this workshop for the use of the INSEE. And we want this information to focus on an analytical evidence and not only on perception and opinions. Of course, this is important, but we want that the key stakeholders that participate in the measurement can give like a very kind of a objective and informed analysis about the context of our national evaluation system to actually know what we're doing, know the framework that we work with, the different actors, the platform, the policy, the national evaluation agendas. So for us, it's very important that we have opinions, of course, but we have like very well-known conceptions of the national evaluation system. And last, I would like to share that we do have a new input, which is a document that is called the Costa Rican National Evaluation System. It's a document that contains good analysis to inform learning and decision making. This is a document that it was structured around the 5 dimensions of the INSEE, which enable a systematic and comparative assessment of the current state of Costa Rica national evaluation system. So pretty much you have there like a very good analysis of every dimension and how this is and how is the current context of the different dimension in our country. And again, we see in this document, which was recently published, that the use of evaluation is one of the key areas that we need to work on. We start with a few actions starting at the beginning of this year to try to do a better monitor and a better implementation of the recommendation of the different evaluation results. But overall, this measurement has highlighted the strengths and weaknesses in our system, and we have incorporated all this information in the work that we do with the national evaluation policy. And it has helped us identify the key areas within the national evaluation system where the concrete actions were needed. And I would like to close my presentation saying that for all the countries that would like to implement the INSEE, it will bring a very good snapshot of the current state of the national evaluation system. And this allow any country that want to implement it. It actually allows to see how you are today and when you want to be in the future, and how do you want to see yourself and how do you want to evolve within the national evaluation system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for this excellent presentation. And thank you to all our panelists for a rich discussion on these important tools. What we are going to do now is we are going to share the Menti, and please, for all the presenters, there are like some questions for you in the chat, if you can also help us with that. And then I'm going to, after the Menti, I'm going to move to some questions for our panelists. So we already so that you are joining from different parts of the world, and here you can see where in the Caribbean you are. We also want to know how young are you in terms of evaluation M&E experience. So we have that the majority of you, you have like 1 to 2 years of experience. And we have, I think like we have a regular composition between 3 and 5, 6 and 10 and more than 10 years of experience. Which of the following best describes your current role? I think that analyst, officer, and practitioners of M&E are the ones that are the majority here, but we can also see that there are like head of departments. We also have like technical operators, and also we have like senior leadership. So it's great to have like different profiles of the participants that we have here. So moving to the questions, so far we have received a lot of questions, and I don't have time to complete them all, but I promise that we are going to, the team backstage, they did a great work compiling all the questions that you have, and I'm going to try to ask one question per panelist. So I really encourage you to take 1 minute to respond. So the first one is for Craig. I'm going to be in the order that you presented. And there's a question here that it says, there are several similarities, I think, among several countries, especially in the Caribbean, where monitoring and evaluation is concerned. So the question to Mr. Craig is, how do you get your leaders to see the value of monitoring and evaluation?
All right, thanks for that question. I think
You have 1 minute, Craig.
The simplest and most direct answer is that it leads to align with what they value most. And of course, what the politicians value most is being able to do their jobs, one, but also to see how you can support them in getting reelected. So if they can't see real personal and political value in it, they're going to see it as, a secondary thing, not really that important, something that the bureaucrats do. And that's a common phrase I keep hearing, oh, these are things that the bureaucrats do. And of course, what you want the politicians to start saying, this is something that the politicians do. And the only way that can happen is when they actually have personal value in advancing their ministries and advancing their political careers, in allowing them to be better communicators. And when that happens, they will give us more support.
Thank you very much, Craig, for your response. I'm moving to Andrew. Andrew, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. So there's a question here. How can partner organizations or non-government actors best support such as tools like MESA within their government partners, rather than creating a parallel reporting structure driven by donor requirements?
Okay, thanks for the question. That's a great question. I think in terms of what we're going to do coming out of the MESA process, working with the different agencies to create unified reporting systems. I mean, there's several initiatives right now in government to do so. Part of the planning process now is to figure out how to unify those processes, right? That's a priority that the findings of MESA expresses quite clearly. So the way to do it, if you're on the outside, if you're an NGO or if you're one of our development partners, anywhere in the UN system or anywhere else really, the way to do it is to reach out to us. So let us know what you're working on, and we can kind of get you involved in some way, shape, or form. I think it's a little difficult for us to hold the civil society organizations as part of our current stakeholder groupings, but we're definitely willing to open conversations and to find some way to make it happen. Right now, the different internal networks we have are really sort of looking at the government partners first, because we are very small. I mean, I spoke about the M&E national M&E oversight team here at NTU. We're 4 people, right? So extending the platform, I mean, you'll notice that when we talked about stakeholders in MESA, we didn't talk too much about NGOs, right? But we're more than willing to have the conversation. And of course, you interact with some of our other agencies much more intimately. So in your reporting processes with them, we can certainly help to iron out some of those kinks. What you'll see coming from us, though, out of the MESA process is the national M&E policy. So the new version of that is going to have some guidelines, right? And those guidelines will encourage the standardization of these systems everywhere in the public sector, and as well, parity and interoperability with our other partners on the outside. So reach out to us. All right, we'll get you involved. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Katie, are you over there?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a question here that can we have a real world example of moving from monitoring activities to evaluating outcomes?
That's another good question. It's we presented two instruments. The MESA is focusing to see both worlds, the monitoring systems and the evaluation systems, and the reason we've we really wanted to look at both worlds was to see to what extent governments are using monitoring systems and to what extent the governments are using evaluation systems. I think in the practice globally, what I've noticed is that a lot of governments start from doing monitoring of their national strategies, key policies. It's a requirement. It's also a requirement that a lot of donor organizations have created. But only in more advanced, more developed countries, we see a stronger functions of evaluations. I think it's important, and our job is really to, in a way, guide governments to, and guide our stakeholders to move from not only collecting the data, not only doing the monitoring of their ongoing processes, but be able to build evaluation systems gradually. And in many countries, we have achieved it. For example, 2 years ago, we started working in Uzbekistan, helping them to do the MESA that has indicated this problem, that they've only had monitoring systems, and we've helped them to do some of the first thinking about what evaluations to do, how to write the evaluation TORs, and how to think of then using this evaluative evidence into informing the national policy making. So that's, I think, the system thinking of how to move from monitoring to also strengthening evaluation systems is very important for us. And through MESA, this is exactly what we are trying to preach and demonstrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And moving to the other tool that we presented today, Juan. So this is like a more like an operational question. How are the 5 dimensions of the INSEE combined? Are the dimensions weighted equally? And is the INSEE also a systems level tool, meaning individuals cannot complete it to get a sense of their own individual evaluation capacity?
Thank you, Chantal, and thank you for this question. Actually, we have 2 questions here, but I will be very, very fast. So the first question about the dimensions. All the dimensions of the INSEE are equally weighted. So there is no single dimension that has more influence than the others in the overall assessment. And the same for the other levels of the structure. So we have these 5 dimensions, but behind we have 18 variables and 74 indicators. Every time we apply this principle of equally weighted. And regarding the second question, the INSEE model, so this structure to describe the capacities of evaluation, is developed to describe the capacities of national evaluation systems. So it cannot be applied, the INSEE cannot be applied to measure capacities of individual organizations. The INSEE operationalization has the focus on the system level. So captures the collective evaluation capacity across institution policies and practices of a country evaluation ecosystem. Thank you, Chantal, and over to you.
Thank you, Juan. So I have a question here for Sarah. Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. So how are state and local community interests reflected in the makeup of the National Development Planning Commission?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. So in Ghana, we have a process where we call it the medium-term planning process. And this process collates right from the grassroots, that's the subnational level. So meetings and sessions where the district assemblies engage the citizens on their priorities. So they build on action plans right from the grassroots. It comes to the district level, then it gets to the regional level, and then it gets to the national level at the National Development Planning Commission. And it is developed to that medium-term development plan for a period. And then this is what the commission goes by. And then it is there for the government of the day to follow in terms of the development priorities of the nation. So that is how it is done in Ghana, right from the grassroots to the national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And last but not least, Carolina, what do you think was the greatest challenge to building the evaluation culture in the public service in Costa Rica?
Very interesting question. I think because Costa Rica have like many advantages during the establishment of the national evaluation system. We have like political viability, we have the support of the international cooperation, but still at some point, I think that the within the public sector, the evaluation is seen as a control and as punishment. So it's very hard to convince institutions to implement evaluations where they think that at the end they're going to be punished somehow, or that we try to control what they do in some point. So that has been like a big pivot for us with the institutions, trying to make them see that evaluation processes are for improvement and not to punish anybody, and to see how the different actions that we do can reach the better outcome for the citizenship. So trying to do that change in the state of mind within the public sector, that I think that has been like the big challenge.
Thank you very much, Carolina. We would like to thank once again all the presenters for their excellent contributions and for the rich discussion we had today. I want to remind you that this presentation is going to be in the Catholic University channel in YouTube. We had like this final question that you already reply on the Menti. In one word, describe what you learned today. So I see MESA, I see INSE, but I also see patience, accountability, planning, useful evaluation, collaboration. And I think that that's something that we want to really enhance. As a closing reflection, today's exchange show that the strengthening monitoring and evaluation systems is both a technical and an institutional journey, one that benefits greatly from dialogue, shared experience, and regional collaboration. We will be organizing additional regional activities throughout the year, and we really look forward to continuing this conversation. We are especially grateful for the collaboration with the Caribbean Development Bank, and we will continue working closely this year with several Caribbean countries. We also hope to expand this work to even more countries going forward. Thank you very much for your participation today, and looking forward to talk to you soon. Have a good day.